Welcome to 2025 and our first episode of the Optimized Law Firm podcast for this new year. Hope you had a great holiday. Excited to get going. There's a lot changing and we're ready to dive in. In this episode today, we're going to talk about the rapidly evolving state of the union when it comes to AI and search. So search is really our bread and butter here at Constellation Marketing. And this is an area that is looking like there's going to be a big shakeup. There already is a lot of stuff going on, but a huge shakeup potentially in 2025 that's really going to affect basically every law firm out there. And so we want to talk about how you can stay ahead of these changes. We're going to make some of our predictions that we think are most likely to happen in this evolving space, and then work on some of the solutions so you can stay ahead of your competitors. I'm Patrick Carver, and I'm the owner of Constellation Marketing. Thank you so much for taking a moment to watch. We've helped over 90 law firms improve their marketing, and most importantly, we help them gain return on investment every single month. Our retention rate is 98.7 every single month in 2024. So we like to get new clients and keep them happy as long as possible, and that's all a credit to our ability to help them make more money. So thanks for the marketing pitch. And now we're going to talk about, what's going on and, what happened in 2024 as far as search dynamics. We're going to talk about how Google really has maintained a lot of that market share. And we're going to bring in some other new concepts like Perplexity, Search GPT, some things like that, because the landscape is really rapidly changing. And then we're going to explore how all that's going to come together and what you can expect as an attorney in 2025. So let's get started talking about really what I would call the state of the union for search. When you talk about the global market share of search engines, it really hasn't changed that much. And so if you look at statistics in December of 2024, the global search engine market shares are as follows: Google 90%, Bing about 4%, Yandex 2.5, that's mostly an international search engine, Yahoo 1.29, Baidu 0.81, DuckDuckGo 0.66. And then if you get into AI search engine use, this area is a bit fuzzy still, but we do know maybe the most used AI search engine is Perplexity, and that's getting about 15 million monthly users. SearchGPT opened up to about 10,000 users. We don't have exact numbers on that, but when we're talking about the global market share of Google or even something like DuckDuckGo, you're talking about hundreds of millions of users, or in Google's case, and Bing, billions of users in those platforms. And so when you look at that compared to 15 million with something like Perplexity, which is really, I would say, top of the heap right now in terms of AI search, of the how much it's been adopted, it's really not that much, right? It's basically a fraction. And so before we get too far ahead of ourselves thinking about how we prepare for it, I think it is super valuable to just understand where we are currently, because some of the predictions and some of the things I'll talk about in the next piece of this are going to be a lot of kind of just keep doing what you're doing. And the reason for that is really not that much has changed in the overall landscape of what people are using to get information from the internet. Now, companies like Gartner have come out and said that they believe search engine volume, so traditional search engine volume, is going to drop by 25% by 2026. You have to take some of these things like with a grain of salt, because really have no idea. And I tend to believe that in this space, as you've seen in the past, these changes come very, very quickly. And so it could really happen at any moment that a big kind of cascading change would happen based on some breakthrough that Search GPT has, or maybe another search engine out there that just has some new unique thing that they're doing that makes the experience better and people like it more. It's super unpredictable. And so as we get into the predictions for 2025, my number one prediction is just stay on your toes, right? And what I mean by that is since we have not seen a substantial market shift yet, it could come at any point. And so a good kind of parallel for this is the emergence of ChatGPT. AI is not new. People have been working with AI and developing that for years, and people have been using it for years. However, it seemed to drop like a bomb this year. And now I've, shown this to uncles and people I know who, basically don't really ever get on the internet, or they do it in a very minimal way. They're the people calling you at Christmas to fix their email or get their remote control figured out. And I've seen them start to play around with ChatGPT, and now they're using it in interesting ways. The person I'm thinking of in mind uses it to create jokes, and so they're not like hardcore users of it or using it in their work, things like that. It's more of a kind of a trick or a novelty at this point. They're not using it for search. They still have these patterns or behaviors, still ingrained in what they're doing. Their first option is as the numbers show, hopping onto Google or one of these other search engines. So their kind of core behavior for finding information, especially most relevant to law firms, finding that local information, right? They're not going to GPT to find a chiropractor in town or a lawyer in town. They're doing it for kind of other purposes, right? Their number one place to go to find a restaurant recommendation or or a lawyer, right, is going to be on Google or going to be on traditional search engines. So I wouldn't just move all in that direction just yet, but I think it would be silly not to keep an eye on the trends here, right, and follow this along, because right now the adoption for these AI search engines is really not anything to write home about. However, I do believe that it's not always going to be like that. We're already starting to kind of see nibbles of this, and we're starting to see shifts based on generations that, younger groups are using more YouTube, they're using more TikTok as far as a search engine to get information. And so I do think there is a real possibility that, Google's market share and just their kind of iron lock on people's behavior when it comes to search may experience very big changes in the next year. So keep an eye on Search GPT, keep an eye on Perplexity over the coming months, and think about how, or see what changes are happening, because at a pin drop, you need to be able to pivot your digital strategy and start to play in those arenas if that's the way that the current is going, right? And one thing that I kind of think is maybe not spoken about as much, but is probably more likely to disrupt that whole area, is going to be Google really making substantial changes by incorporating more AI into their search results over this year, because I think they certainly see this as a credible threat to their dominance. And they had been criticized in 2024 and before for basically being slow, and letting Search GPT or Chat GPT get out there and, create all this energy and momentum around it. And they were kind of lagging behind in the AI. They've made some good jumps with Gemini and other areas. And so I don't think they're going to they're not going to go down without a fight, right? And so I fully expect that Google's results will become more AI driven. And so just overall, we need to keep learning about how these results are crafted, how LLMs work, and ultimately what we can do to maximize our presence in those spaces. All right, moving on to the number 2 prediction for 2025. This is kind of a bad one, but prepare for less traffic and fewer leads through organic search. So again, this is all up in the air, right? We don't really know how all of this is going to shake out. Could it aid law firms? It could, for sure. But I'll give you a little bit of what we've seen and why I think this is going to have this type of impact in 2025. So one of the biggest things we tracked this year was the increase of AI overviews. And so if you go to any search now, particularly for like informational type queries where you're asking a question or comparison or want information, you're going to see those Google AI overviews where it's actually trying to craft a response in real time and show that above all of the other search results. And so when they rolled this out, it was like the worst month of the year for a lot of our clients because they were occupying those first positions or second positions in the search rankings that we've been able to get them in those positions. And suddenly Google's now on top, right? And what I believe effect this had was people were no longer going to click through to our client websites and at least giving them the opportunity to try and convert that person as a lead. Instead, they were effectively ripping those answers from our clients, putting them in the AI overview. And so a smaller percentage of people were no longer actually clicking through and going to there. And so we saw, modest, not like, huge lead drops for our clients, but on those pages that, had traditionally done 5-10 leads every month or two, you start to add those up across the board and it can be a really powerful source of leads for your business. And what this did was either kind of like cut that in half or in some cases, basically remove all of it because my sentiment is that people were just no longer going to your website. And so you don't even have the opportunity to like show that you're an authority and give them some additional information around their issue and that you're a credible person to help them deal with it. We basically prioritize those in a second tier, those type of keywords and pages, as opposed to the first tier of pages that we're going after, where it's very specific, clear search terms like lawyer, like personal injury lawyer, Cincinnati, where somebody's actively looking for a lawyer. These, in a lot of cases, are people doing research, figuring things out, learning about it. Those typically make for not as good quality leads because they're generally not actively looking for a lawyer, but they still produce leads. And so we are looking at ways to replace this and figure it out. And we've already deployed some strategies for this, and we're happy to share those. If you want to hop on a call with us, and we'll give those out free, but we're not really going to go into detail here. So we've seen that this all happened, and the good news is that it was somewhat mitigated by the fact that these AI overviews now have citations, so they're effectively showing which websites they have stolen or summarize the content from, which could include yours. And so this reminds me a lot of when they had these featured snippets added to the search results a few years ago. And it was a similar thing where, Google basically was like trying to answer the question before user actually got to the search result, which is, in my opinion, always a net negative for law firms. But in this case, we're starting to see some of that traffic get clawed back. We are seeing more of our clients in those featured areas, those citation areas, reference areas for the AI overviews. And so don't stop optimizing for these. Think about it like a featured snippet and continue working with your SEO provider if you're doing it yourself to figure out how to get into those. And just a couple of nuggets to focus on. Think about clear, concise answers. That's what Google's really looking for. Don't load it up with a bunch of fluff. Really try to get it and answer the user query as quickly as possible. Because ultimately, Google's primary goal is always to solve user questions quickly and keep them happy. So you can still play a part in that. It just may change and you may be getting a little bit less of that traffic. But again, we're already deploying methods and alternatives to try and offset those losses. And we were able to do that in the fourth quarter of 2024 with some creative strategies that have gotten clients who had lots and lots of traffic from more of those informational results they're getting it back. So that's great news, and we may cover that in a future podcast. All right, let's get to number 3 on our list. My third prediction for 2025 is that digital authority is going to play an increasingly important role in your success as a law firm owner. All right, so what am I talking about when it comes to digital authority? This is, roughly speaking, going to be your presence online. How strong is it? And so this can be quantified in a couple of ways. And we're talking about your website. We're talking about link profile. We're talking about citation profile across the internet. How and where is your business listed? Is it listed in all of the popular directories? Is it listed in legal directories? Are you on referential sites like Wikipedia or other things like that? And the final piece of that is going to be content appearing in multiple platforms or multiple mediums. So think about having a presence on YouTube, TikTok, all of these large sites that get a ton of traffic. These, you can think about them as kind of like the bedrock signals for search engines and LLMs. If you're an LLM, and so I'm talking about ChatGPT or Claude or Llama and Meta, all of this stuff. Those are your LLMs, or a search engine. You are trying to sift through an enormous amount of data to try and figure out who actually is an authority, right? And that's a big challenge. And this is the focus of our work a lot of the time. The common thread across search engines, AI, LLMs, all of this stuff is that they have to give good answers to the user, because if they don't, they lose all credibility. This is really the core value proposition of Google, and really the same with ChatGPT as well. And so any problems with that is a problem with their business, because you think about with what happened with ChatGPT, as their answers started hallucinating and giving fake information, it caused a lot of credibility to be lost with the tool, that people, we can't really trust it. Where's this information coming from? And things like that. And so now you're starting to see them actually cite references in the responses. And so they are reliant on people like you who are out there creating content, displaying your knowledge and basically utilizing that. And so I don't think the historical trade-off is dead. I don't think that the historical trade-off I'm talking about is that if you create content and make it really good and spend time on it, make sure it's accurate, all that stuff, you are going to get organic traffic in return. So I don't think that that's over, but I do think it's shifting, right? And so there's going to be opportunities and losses in the short term if you don't stay nimble and kind of figure out how to best optimize for that. But let's get back to the digital authority piece. And if you're not familiar with Google's search algorithm, authority's always been about 50% of the algorithm, and the other 50% is content. And so the amalgamation of your content generally shows your knowledge and an understanding of a topic, and the link profile of your website is going to influence the authority side. So it's these two things that combine, and that's who gets rewarded in search. Google's always tweaking this. They're always going back and forth. And as of a few years ago, content was really shining. And then we became completely awash in AI content. People were standing up 10,000 page websites overnight. And Google now had a new problem on their hands, indexing and classifying all of this new AI content. How would they do it? And so when content has when it's become a spammy to some degree, or they feel like the results are littered with poor quality content, they swing that to the other side to reward more of the authority side. And that's the situation I believe we find ourselves in right now, because it's really easy to create AI content now. There's like 1,000 tools out there that can do it. You can just go to ChatGPT and do it. So literally anyone who wants to write an article can tap in a couple of words and get an entire article. So they need to figure out a way, if everybody can write and basically write at about the same level, if it's all being generated through ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, well, how do we figure out what's actually the best search result, right? That's where the authority comes in, and they can see, oh, you've been cited on this website over here. Oh, you have all of these business profiles. We are going to favor you over the person down the street who just stood up their website, put 10 articles up on the site, didn't do anything else, right? That to them is someone who has not established themselves as an authority on the internet, right? So I believe you need to invest even more this year in link building, making sure you have citations across all directories, both general and legal, getting your content appearing in multiple mediums, so that same content or new content appearing on YouTube, TikTok, these other areas where both Google search and LLM search they're going to go to get those signals. They want to see whether or not you're an authority. The second reason why I think this is going to play a really large role in the results this year is that Google's starting to experiment with AI in their search results. And so, the AI overviews that I've talked about at first were a little bit concerning, but the thing I've seen with that is that the more local specific results have no AI element to them. And so I'm talking about people searching for our target keywords, the ones we focus on the most, which are going to be some variation of attorney or lawyer in city. And those are the ones that pay the bills. They're the ones that bring the best clients, the best leads, all of that stuff. And so my initial thought is, well, this doesn't really matter too much. It just makes the landscape a little more competitive for those target keywords, because we're going to need more of those leads to offset leads being lost from informational queries. But this may change and may change quickly. We never know how kind of quickly Google is going to adopt these things. But what we've seen in the past, whenever they roll out something like this, a new type of search or adjustments to their search results, they do it in little sprinkles, right? The LSA ads were rolled out in sprinkles across the U.S. for years, and then now we are where we are with it being basically universally adopted across cities and types of professions as well, which it wasn't always the case there. We're starting to see AI in local search results. So people asking for best tacos in Denver or something like that, they're starting to formulate AI overviews based on what appears to be website data or website information, and also social media. And so they are looking for, at least the early signs show them looking and placing an importance on user-generated content. So things that are being found in those social media engines that are signs of authority are what they're factoring in addition to like web presence and maybe how many reviews they have on their Google business profile, using a bunch of these factors to come up with kind of these AI type overviews that are going to be like, it appears like the best tacos are these 3 places because they've got this number of reviews, they've got yada yada. So you can see like how this may shift in the future, where they may not be the judge of if someone's searching best personal injury attorney in my city. They may not outright just pick one person or something like that. But I don't think it's out. I mean, I don't think it's a far off idea that they are going to start trying to have some level of summarization around the people in those areas, because I think in their mind it probably makes more sense to reward people who have reviews and these like user generated signals that are hard to manipulate, whereas you can manipulate the search rankings by doing SEO, right? And people who are maybe not the actual expert in that arena or in that city are getting outsized coverage because they know how to do SEO, or maybe they're doing kind of like a hack with like an exact match domain, and so they're getting an outsized benefit from the way the algorithm is working. But this may change very quickly, and so I would highly recommend diversifying and getting reviews across multiple platforms, making your presence known in different platforms, so that no matter what signal is being used to calculate those in Google search engines or other LLM search engines, you are ahead of the curve and you can come out on top when these things maybe start to become more widespread. And the final reason that digital authority is going to play a huge role in 2025 is that brand signals are harder to fake, right? So when I talked about the first item that we're washing this AI content, these AI tools have essentially eliminated the barrier of entry to writing pretty good content on the internet, right? So there used to be language barriers to this. There used to be knowledge barriers to writing legal content. And so, it kept some people out of that arena. But now that these barriers have been effectively eliminated for the general population, you can, you can create legal documents that are not that bad, or opinions about legal that you don't ever have to actually do the research. It's going to basically do the research for you, right? It's going to do that and spit it out. And so you don't actually have to be the expert on that topic to put out a pretty credible article on the internet from there, right? So going back to the idea that we're washing this content, how does Google solve this issue? And for me, the answer is brand authority. And so they're going to look at these platforms as evidence that you know what you're talking about, that other people, user-generated signals, are propping you up as an expert in the area. And so this is generally harder for people who are just creating like lead gen sites or whatever to fake this, right? Because they don't want to get out there and have a presence and be an actual business. It's, they're wanting to do all of this without having them have to personally be a brand, or like, be on camera, or create those properties on these different platforms. So one of the best things you can do to kind of insulate yourself is going to be building up these channels, building up your content on these channels, so that you have these signals when these different search engines are looking around and trying to figure out who they want to place in their results. And this brings me to my fourth and final recommendation or prediction for 2025 and the state of search engines and AI search. Not focusing on the fundamentals will cost you a lot in the short term. So this is no doubt an exciting time, and I had to stop and start this podcast a number of times, because every time I try to put an outline together, something dramatic would change, right? Like Search GPT would come out, or a variety of these things that kind of fundamentally change my thinking about where we are currently and where we're about to go. And so I had to stop and start. But the more I thought about this in preparation for this, was that really not that much has changed just yet anyway. As I mentioned, there is reason to believe this will change, but we are not there yet. And I would say one of the biggest problems I see with law firm owners is shiny object syndrome. They are constantly obsessed with going and trying a new thing, a new hack. They've heard about something from another salesperson or at a conference that somebody's doing, and they want to jump on it and kind of get into it. And there's nothing wrong with exploring that stuff. And in a number of cases, it can be really effective. The one that kind of speaks to me, that is kind of constantly peddled as this new cure-all for law firm owners to get new business, is social media. That you just put up a couple of videos, here and there, and then leads come rolling in. And this pursuit takes away from the fundamentals that have propelled most law firms and their business over the past however many years. And what I'm talking about is traditional search marketing. So search engine optimization, utilizing the organic results, or advertising that is in the search results, but obviously you're paying for it. And so we see from our clients in aggregate data across 90 different law firms that the vast majority of new clients are coming in through search. This takes into account law firms who their number one focus is TikTok, right? Or YouTube. They have a really big presence on YouTube. And in aggregate, it's still search. So yes, social media absolutely works for certain lawyers. Not gonna argue that. YouTube can be super powerful. People will do podcasts. I mean, there's all sorts of different stuff where people have had success and continue to have success, whether it's direct mail, billboards, TV. I'm not, I'm agnostic with this stuff in terms of marketing. I'm not here to tell you to do one thing or the other. I always believe that, we have evidence to show, that one way, we prefer one way, and kind of here's why we prefer that. So I would take a hard look at whether or not you are getting business right now from search. Most likely are at some level, or ads. And I would really double down on that. I don't think now is the time to completely shift strategy and start to try to become the expert on AI search. It's too early. It's exciting, but it's not really a true opportunity yet. And until it starts to move that way, where we're seeing real big changes in user behavior, there's really nothing to do, right? Because the information that's coming out right now, as far as how to optimize or how to optimize for these LLMs, is really anecdotal. We don't have enough data to make these kind of determinations. And so I also think it's kind of a fool's errand until there's more people in there utilizing it. But that doesn't mean you should take your eye off the ball. Stay on your toes, as I recommended, because this could shift at any point. But the fact remains that 90% of all search on the internet is still on Google. So think about your SEO efforts, think about your ads, double down on those efforts. Then start to incorporate some of these other areas that I think will have a much bigger impact in 2025, like building up your social media presence, your video presence on YouTube, making sure your business profile consistency is rock solid across the internet, building more links, becoming more of authority in your space. And that will give you that profile, that digital profile, that I think will be a huge asset for law firm owners in 2025. So that'll do it for today's podcast. Thanks so much for taking a listen. If you have questions about this podcast, about any of the material on there, feel free to reach out to me. My email is patrick@goconstellation.com, and we won't give you a big, heavy sales pitch. Happy to help, happy to go back and forth. I love talking about this stuff, and we are truly here to help, and want to set ourselves apart as one of the good guys in the legal marketing space. So let me prove that to you, and hope you have a great January. Hope you're off to a great start already, and wish you all the best success this year, and come back for more. Thanks.